brief us about the 17+1 mechanism?
The 17+1 mechanism could be called also a sort of a South-South collaboration. The bilateral trade have surpassed more than $95 billion.
So how would you characterize this mechanism in a few words?
The concept 17+1 was ambitious, and this is the ambitious part. The idea of multilateralism.
Potential, diversity, intellectual challenge, and connectivity.
What kind of engagement do member countries have with China today under this mechanism?
We have the railway connection through Belgrade to Budapest.
The Czech Republic, particularly my home country, the European Union and China are very good partners in struggling against unipolarism and unilateralism.
Hello and welcome back to this special edition of Dialogue with the World. I'm Zhang Shanhui and you're watching the second part of our program. In the previous episode, we made a complete assessment of the mechanism and we discussed the current challenges that the member countries are now facing and how the 17+1 mechanism can help the global economy recover. This time, we will discuss the mechanism's relationship with our other regional organizations and the Belt and Road Initiative and some other pressing questions. Joining me today are 4 experts in international relations and economic development. They're Mr. Ding Yifan, a senior fellow at the Institute of the World Development under the Development Research Center at the State Council, online with us from Beijing. Hello, Mr. Ding Yifan. And from Warsaw, Poland, Mr. Radek Pajfo, former director of the AIIB, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and head of China Business Program Department at the Kosminski University. And Mr. Zvonimir Stopek is joining us from Zagreb in Croatia, and you're currently assistant professor in international relations at Capital Normal University in China and Zagreb School of Economics and Management in Croatia. And also joining us from Prague, Mr. Marek Hubek, Director of Center of the Global Studies at the Czech Academy of Sciences and member of the International Academic Committee at China Central and Eastern Europe Institute at Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. So thank you for joining us and welcome to you all. So my first question this time goes to Mr. Hubek. So we're noticing today that some bilateral cooperations between China and Central and Eastern European countries are conducted under the framework of BRI, which is Belt and Road Initiative. Are there any occasions where the BRI intersects with the China CEC mechanism?
Yes, indeed, they do interact with each other. Mm-hmm. Why the 17+ cooperation can be understood in its narrower sense with its own agenda, it plays also an important role of the part of the Belt and Road Initiative. The 16+1 and later 17+1 cooperation was created in order to develop a dialogue and cooperation among China and 16 and later 17 Central and European countries. At the same time, it is defined in a way that it is considered one part of Belt and Road, which focus on the specific macro region of Belt and Road, Central Eastern Europe. Both the projects contain various types of activities in the fields of investment, energy, transport, trade, research, education, culture, environment, etc. On the one hand, the Belt and Road Initiative deals with countries with the very different histories, economies, politics, cultures, etc. Even if they share the historical basis of the Euro-Asian heritage, if they are in Eurasia, for example. On the other hand, the advantage of the 17+ cooperation is that it is much more specific in the sense that it's less diverse and less dispersed. We share much more, even if there are various differences among the 17 Central and Eastern European countries themselves. Still, these countries share the experience with the economic transformation, with socialist market economy automation, and the Belt and Road and 17+ cooperation complement each other in this way.
Okay, and what about Mr. Ding Yifan? What's your opinion about on the links between the Belt and Road Initiative and China's CEC mechanism?
I think that the 17+1 mechanism is a typical representation of success story of its BRI, because most of the projects concerning, for example, Greece and Hungary and Serbia are also a very successful history of a success story of this BRI. Greece is one of the European countries that has committed itself to better and BRI to this story, and then Greece is a very important country in terms of maritime transport. While Greece's railway is connected with BRI to Hungary and then to Serbia, to all these countries, and then China is helping Serbia and Hungary to build an express railway connected together, and then this transport could go until Greece and to Pira port, and then to ship to global market. So that's something very, very important. And then I think that not only these, but a lot of connectivity projects realized under the BRI level was realized in all these 17 member countries. And that showed that the connectivity of all these countries are very important in terms of unifying the regional and global market.
So, Mr. Paifo, what's your opinion? What benefits can the BRI bring to the 17+1 mechanism? I mean, Mr. Dinifan has already mentioned a part of it, and what's your opinion on this question?
I think it's very hard to add anything valuable to this discussion after that what was said by Professor Krubeck and Professor Dink. But I would say yes, connectivity is very important, especially for Poland, as we have around 70 or 80% of the blockchain trains entering the European Union through the border of Poland and Belarus, right? So China-Europe Express. So the connectivity is very important from the perspective of country like Poland too. And I think what the region can benefit, I think the better integration with the global markets and the better integration within the project, within the initiative, because this initiative is crucial because it changes the whole situation in the region, and it changes also the relation of the European Union and China. So we have the huge integration of the markets, and as a Central Eastern Europe, we want to take a part in this. So I think that the integration is very much important, and also the advancement and the promotion of the region. Mm-hmm. So that was also mentioned many times, but by the speakers in our discussion. And I would say also the inclusion of the local concept, because concepts like the Free Seas Initiative, which is the local initiative in Central Eastern Europe, and I've been participating in Belt and Road summits in 2000, I think the first one in Beijing, that was 2017 and 2019. And I could hear the Chairman Xi Jinping talking about the local initiatives of Central Eastern Europe and integrating it into the concept of Belt and Road initiative, and I think it's a very good idea.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Paifo, from you, an economist point of view, the Central and Eastern European countries represents more than 100 million people. In 2019, the bilateral trade volume between China and Central and Eastern European countries reached over $95 billion. This accounts for 14% of China-EU bilateral trade volume. Do you think that China and CEEC enjoys even greater potential in its trade relations today from your economical point of view?
I think there's a huge potential, especially it depends how we calculate the numbers, because as in Central Eastern Europe, we have really strong connections with the western part of the continent and with the European Union. And a lot of companies actually, especially in Poland or in Western Poland, we are the subcontractors of the big European companies. So last year, I think we ended up with the conclusion, and we signed, as a European Union, we signed this investment deal with China. But if you look at the structure, many small companies in Central Eastern Europe, they work with the big companies of Western Europe. Mm-hmm. So if you calculate the trade, well, it doesn't count as the volume actually being produced in the Central Eastern Europe, because it's just a small part of the products being exported to China from Western Europe. So, you know, it's very important how we calculate the numbers. But I think if we develop the cooperation, the numbers maybe the figures maybe change as well.
Mm-hmm. So you mean that it really depends on how you calculate it, but there's still a great potential between China and Eastern European countries, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. That's actually that's the point.
And so, Mr. Ding Yifan and Mr. Stopik, this is a question for you, because it would be interesting to see and to hear a Chinese expert view and a foreign expert view on this question about some concerns about some Western media who described that the Belt and Road Initiative is a death trap or a Chinese Marshall Plan in which China would predominate the cooperation or even influence the domestic economy of Western European countries. Is this the case with your country, Mr. Stopik? Is this what you think of this statement?
Well, if we say, if I'm going to talk about Croatia, then the answer is definitely no, because Croatia doesn't really have any large projects with China. Mm-hmm. There is a bridge being built by a Chinese company, but it is financed entirely from European Union and Croatian money, and the Chinese company is just a contractor in this matter. So Croatia is not a very good example. But if I say a regional, a little bit, if I take a look at a wider regional perspective, there is Bosnia, there's Serbia, there is Montenegro, which have been more involved in a lot more Belt and Road or China plus 17 projects.
What do you think of Mr. Stopik's response? Do you think that is the case in China, or in the Chinese view? How do you interpret this question, and what do you think of this statement?
Let's make a comparison between a Chinese BRI and the American Marshall Plan. So, because they wanted to compare Chinese BRI project to Marshall Plan, saying that this Chinese Marshall Plan, or to some extent, they are committing a sort of error. The error is called mirror imaging. They wanted to project their image, their own image towards China, because Chinese look, after 4 years of American unilateralism with Joe Biden, we say that American is coming back to multilateralism. While the Joe Biden's multilateralism is still inseparable from its American leadership. So in every multilateralism American way, there is an idea of American leadership. They always wanted other countries, they called their allies, to abide by American rules, to follow Americans' ideas, to follow American objectives. That's the American multilateralism. While Chinese is not behaving in this way. Mm-hmm. We don't call these. If you look at the BRI, most of the BRI project or proposal are made by recipient countries. They submitted to Chinese government their demands, their needs to connectivity, the needs of infrastructure construction, and so on and so forth. And then China will respond to their demand, to their request. So that's how the BRI is happening currently. So Chinese way, Chinese multilateralism, well, Chinese BRI is responsive. China will respond positively to other countries' demands. Look at recently, China reached a commercial and free trade agreement with other countries called RCEP, Regional Economic Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, that a free trade agreement that China concluded with Japan, South Korea, ASEAN countries, Australia, and New Zealand. All these countries will make up the biggest free trade areas in the world. So in the middle of the negotiation, China never pushed all these countries to go for some topic, for some objective. China always let ASEAN countries take the lead. The RCEP is a good example how China managed its multilateralism. In the cooperation, multilateral cooperation with other countries, China never tried to impose its willingness to other countries. China never imposed its willingness to these BRI projects. Unlike Western countries, especially the United States, wanted to lead everything, to give a leadership to everything, while China responded positively to other countries' requests, to other countries' needs. That's how China enterprised the international multilateralism, and how China responded to all these countries' needs in the middle of the crisis, in the middle of a deep economic recession.
So China is trying to respond to the needs of these countries, but the 17+1 cooperation has achieved many economic results, especially helping the 17 European countries to improve their infrastructure. But, however, these projects have also encountered criticism that China's projects do not really meet EU standards. So how do you see this criticism, Mr. Hubeck? Because Mr. Ding Yifan was talking about what China can offer, what China can help with other countries. But what do you think of the criticism on the quality of the infrastructure built by China?
It is important to meet the EU and Chinese standards in mutual cooperation, of course. Nevertheless, sometimes there is an intercultural misunderstanding in Europe, I may say. It is necessary to understand the issue of standards in time. The European Union has also problems with standards sometimes, also with its own double standards. The European politicians focus too much on mass media electoral campaigns every year, be they parliamentary, presidential, regional, or local ones. And they have sometimes problems to be able to concentrate also on the long-term perspective. While short-term perspective is also relevant, of course, the exclusive, short-sighted perspective blocks partly understanding of the long-term projects and plans, including necessary standards which are there. It is relevant to reflect that it is already more than 40 years of the Chinese transformation and opening up, and the following intensive cooperation of China with Western countries, including Western European countries. So we will see how the cooperation of China and Central and Eastern European countries will look like after 40 years of cooperation. So far, it's promising. So I think it's important to see also this long-term perspective, which also the Western European countries needed. And I'm very positive in this sense.
Let's talk about now the political statements or the political choices and the economical choices of European countries, because of the 17 European members countries of the China and CEC mechanism, 12 are European Union members and 15 are member of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Is this the case for Poland and also for Czech Republic? So today we've got Mr. Hubeck with us and Mr. Paifo with us to talk about this issue, because you both countries where you come from, Poland and Czech Republic, is the case because you are at the same time in the China and CEC mechanism, and you're also in European Union and also in NATO. So how do your countries balance these three membership?
Poland would be mentioned as an example of this. No surprise. Well, I would say it's still not that challenging because the 17+1 as a mechanism, it's cannot be compared to European Union or NATO because it's I think it's a forum of exchanging the views. It's more like a platform of dialogue between the countries. And if we look at our links to with European Union economical links and NATO in terms of security, they are much more stronger than 17+1, which we do not find as something challenging and antagonizing our cooperation with the European Union and NATO, even as rather complementary element of international policy.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't, let's say, find it a crucial challenge. As you mentioned, this balancing because it's a different kind of cooperation and it cannot be compared to European Union and NATO right now at the moment.
And what about you, Mr. Hubak? What's your point of view on, especially with your country, the Czech Republic? How do you interpret? How would you see these? Is it a dilemma for you or this question for you?
I don't see a dilemma there. We in the Czech Republic are part of the European Union. We entered the European Union after the referendum when citizens decided to join the European Union. It is our base here. And as Europeans, we want to keep good multilateral relations with others in Eurasia. And China is the important partner in Eurasia. We want to keep good relations also in the Americas and other parts of the world, including Africa. So it's important to keep a multilateral balance. And China CEC cooperation, 17+1 cooperation, plays an important role here. It's a question of, it's an issue of multilateral relations.
Mr. Stopik, I would like to ask you a question about also some debating issues, because some European think tanks have raised the concern that China is pursuing an assertive strategy of divide and conquer in order to benefit China at Europe's expense. How do you look at this issue?
This is a kind of similar to the question you just asked a little bit earlier. What Professor Ding just said, I agree with him completely. When you compare, for example, I'm just going to refer to this for just one moment, like Marshall Plan or China Belt and Road initiative, they're not comparable, of course. This is exaggeration on one part for sure. And the same thing is with this. You know, when you put it's divide and conquer or some of these things, these are exaggerations, of course. The thing is, however, what I would say, what happens? Why do you come to these conclusions? So why someone even perceives these projects in this way? I think it is because of a problem of approach. I see a little bit issue with the Chinese approach to these projects because they do seem to Europeans or Americans, it doesn't matter, as a little bit naive. I mentioned the concept win-win, mutual cooperation, and so on. These are just words, you know. But when you look at it on the field, I'm going to come back to the Balkan area, for example. All these economical projects, which some countries choose or go into, have consequences, and they very often have political consequences on the field or on the large scale. Serbia is one example of a country which China really likes because it reacts positively to Chinese initiatives. But on a political level, Serbia manipulates the relations with China in order to do certain political choices with European Union and Russia and so on. This is not only an economical thing. When you look at Bosnia, for example, and projects which are taken within Bosnia and Herzegovina, you will very quickly notice that most of the projects belong to one entity, Republika Srpska, but not, for example, Federation. You only have 1 or 2 projects there and 7 projects in the other part, the Republika Srpska, which is closer to Serbia. So it's a political thing on the level. These projects are usually involves a huge amount of money. 200 million, 300 million. The Tuzla power plant is 800 million, the largest investment in Bosnia ever. So these things have direct consequences. And when you look at them from the outside, from the European perspective, of course, they will shine with an idea. Oh, this is China politically being involved. Maybe not directly from Chinese perspective, but from perspectives of those countries, perspective of Europe, yes, it has an echo of politics inside, because it will surely affect. So this is what I'm saying. Very careful. We should be always very careful, and China should be quite careful in how to address these challenges in the future.
Yeah, so in the Chinese point of view, how to address these mechanisms. So I was just wanting to ask this question to Mr. Ding Yifan. China continues to depend its relationship with the European Union while playing an active role in the China and CEC mechanism, as Mr. Stopik just mentioned. So how does China tailor its strategy towards these two organizations, different organizations?
China doesn't see any conflicts between 17+1 mechanism and China's cooperation with the European Union. We don't see any conflicts in this. We don't ask all these 17 countries to make a choice between their membership to EU, to NATO, or their cooperation with China. We don't see this because we fully understand that some Eastern European countries or Central European countries may have security concerns. They don't leave protection of NATO, a military political organization. For them, we fully understand their security concern. But we also wanted them to be involved into economic cooperation with China within the framework of 17+1.
So what about the Chinese strategy on this? What about Chinese strategy when China is addressing to the 7+1 mechanism, and when China is addressing to European Union? What are the differences in the strategy that China adopted?
We don't see any discriminations among those 17+1, so 17 countries, and European countries. We only see a difference of development level in 17 countries and all the European countries, the former member of the European Union. Most of these former European Union members are developing economies, while most of the 17 Eastern European countries are developing countries. So we wanted to help them with developing economies. We are developing mostly international trade. In the framework of free trade, we want to develop with all these countries. While with 17 European, Eastern and Central European countries, we wanted to develop another kind of source cooperation. So we wanted to share with them experience of development, and we wanted to help them better their infrastructure works, and because we think that better infrastructure works are essential, a fundamental basis for a better economy in the future. So that's completely different. We have different options for these. We don't see any contradiction or conflicts between all these different targets.
Thank you for sharing your interesting view on China and Central and Eastern European countries' mechanism. And thank you for watching. That will be the end of our program. I'll see you next time.